Thank you all for joining us. I see we've got a good crowd on with us now. Super excited to have you all here with us for the last user group of the season. With that, I'm very excited to introduce Jessica Jolly, our presenter this evening. Jessica, I turn the screen over to you.
All right. Well, thank you all. Super great to be here. So I am a Microsoft certified trainer, and that's actually a second career for me. I was a facilities manager for many years for a large Fortune 100 company in the Chicagoland area. And when they moved their facilities to the East Coast, I had to decide what I wanted to do with my life. And I had been teaching on a pro bono basis at my local public library and teaching Microsoft Office, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided, well, you know what? Let me just go ahead and see if I can pivot and make something of that. So in 2016, I took my first Microsoft certification exam and have not looked back. So you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't need to tell you guys, I always tell my students, the Power BI community is super welcoming and wants everyone to succeed. So, but I don't need to tell you guys that you already know. I do tweet occasionally, not as much as I should. And I do have a website that I'm really trying to get into the habit of blogging there on a regular basis. So wish me luck on that because I've been thinking that for a couple of years now. I split my time between the Chicago suburbs and the Maine woods, and actually that's where I am right now. And we had our first big snowfall, so winter is here, people. And then you can see a couple of my hobbies that I do when I'm not sitting in front of my computer. So you can see that they're either outside or something with my hands. So again, that's a little bit about me. And what I'm going to do, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my computer. I'm not my, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my computer. No, I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm feeling like I have a little less bandwidth than I need. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera because now you know that I'm a real person. All right. So before I get started, let me just get like a show of hands or something in the chat. Who here has not taken the PL-300 or the DA-100, which was its predecessor? Okay, I'm just kind of getting an idea here. Okay. Whoa, got a lot of people here who haven't. Yay. All right. Yay, you're my peeps. All right. Today we're going to talk about taking the Power BI exam. I noticed that Tina phrased it as passing the Power BI exam, the PL-300, but no one can guarantee that you can pass, okay? So I prefer to phrase it as taking the PL-300 exam. And but before we even go there, we really need to ask ourselves the question, why do you want to take this exam? Okay, so there's no law that says you have to take one of these certification exams. They can jumpstart your career or advertise your skills. So if you're trying to, let people know that you have a set of skills, that's one way to do it. Okay. But not everybody certifies. Some people are wizards at Power BI and they don't need to prove it with the certification. For example, I do not think that Adam and Patrick have taken the certification exams from Guy in a Cube. I don't think that Chris Wagner has taken the certification exam, and I think they probably have unparalleled skills that nobody would dispute. So again, you don't have to take one of these exams. It really, I guess it comes down to how much street cred do you have? So are you already recognized as an expert? In which case you would just give it a miss. Okay, there's no compelling logic that says you must pass one of these exams. And do you need the certification? Sometimes it's nice to put it on a resume, to be able to say, I have this certification. It seems to be kind of a good story to add. Okay, but again, there's no law that says you have to take one of these exams. The next question you have to ask yourself is, are you ready to take the exam? Now, I have a very different philosophy on exams. So what I have found is that you're either, and of course these are broad categories, you're either somebody who wants to really prepare and study and just go over and over and over until you're, just almost 100% certain that you're going to pass, and then you take the test. And my husband is one of those people. He's diligent. He'll study for months before he'll take an exam. And of course, he always passes his exams. I, on the other hand, will just jump in. I'll go take one. And a lot of times I just take the attitude that, well, I'm going to find out, how far off I am or how far away I am from where I need to be. Interestingly enough, I earned my MCSE that way. I learned it because I earned that because back in, I guess it was 2018, the third exam in the MCSE was, you had a couple of options, and the one I took was data modeling. And I can promise you, I did not have any data modeling experience whatsoever. But I'm a very good test taker. And so I said, well, I'll just go in, I'll just do it and see what happens. And I passed. And I recently did that exact same thing with the I think it's called the DP-500, the new one that they've just released. And I was like, I know I'm not qualified to take this exam, but I want to take an assessment and just kind of see where I'm at and how far I have to go. And I passed it. Now, before you say, "Oh, well, you just know more than you thought you did," and whatever, um, probably not. Okay, probably not. I mean, my real test for myself is, would I teach this? And for example, I did pass the PL-100, which is the entry level for Power Apps. I wouldn't teach it. I've taught the course once, and I just don't feel like I'm fully qualified to teach it. So for me, my test is not, can I pass the exam, but can I teach this? And so, for example, with the DP-500, I passed it, but I would put that down to mostly being a very good test taker. All right, so you kind of have to decide what kind of test taker you are. And I think the one thing I didn't really put on any slide, but I really want to reiterate is failing an exam is not failing. Okay. In fact, I would argue the opposite. If you never fail an exam, you're not stretching. Okay. I'm not saying fail every single exam every single time. Of course you want to pass exams. But if you never fail an exam, I would say there's a good argument to be made that you are not stretching yourself. You are not trying for things, new things. And in fact, I remember when I passed that data modeling exam, I was stunned, to be honest. I really was stunned. But it gave me the encouragement I needed to say, well, gee, I bet I could learn this. And so then I went and I was like, okay, well, let me go try to learn what data modeling is. So again, you really have to assess what kind of test taker you are. And just be aware that no matter what, you're not a failure if you fail a test. Okay. You're just not. You do want to be reasonably confident. Okay. And what do I mean by reasonably confident? That's a very subjective statement. But my gauge from myself is, can I explain it to somebody else? And I think there's two different kinds of teachbacks that will really help you decide if you understand the topic. One is volunteer to do a teach back to, members of this of a user group. They're a great audience because a lot of them already have these technical skills. And so as you do a teach back on a topic, they'll be able to say, okay, yep, that's great, but you missed this or you missed that. So that's giving a teach back or a small presentation on a particular topic allows you the opportunity to articulate something in plain English, which is always, in my mind, a very good indicator of whether you understand it or not. You can also do a teach back to a Power BI newbie. So somebody who doesn't really understand Power BI it isn't going to be able to fill in the gaps if when you're speaking about it. So they're going to be a really good indicator of, I don't understand what you're saying at all, which means probably you don't understand it well enough to break the topic down and be very clear about it. I will say that for me, when I teach, And that's all I do really. I just do training. I'm not a developer. I tried developing and it's just not my cup of tea. But when I'm training, I find that I know that I've really mastered a concept when I can articulate it to the students in as few words as possible. So again, that process of incorporating the ideas, spitting them back in your own words, is a great way to see if you really understand something. Um, and of course, you want to go through the topic list on the exam page. And you do want to make sure you've studied each of them. I will say there's been a lot of chatter about Microsoft Learn and the Microsoft Learn platform. And I don't use it really. Microsoft, as if you train at all, you'll know that recently Microsoft decided that all the training should come from their Microsoft Learn platform. And what I tell my students is it's great because they're always updating that platform. So of course I'm always trying to find, a good news story out of it. Okay. But I also find that the Microsoft Learn platform is not the be all and end all. Okay. So you're going to need to look for other sources to use. And maybe that's YouTube videos, maybe that's books. For me, it's books. I really actually enjoy reading books, and that's the way I learn best. But again, there's lots and lots of content out there that you can supplement the Microsoft Learn content with. All right, so I want to talk briefly about the process of scheduling the exam and some of the things that I have encountered in scheduling. So you now have the option, or you've had the option for a while, to take the exam online. Um, and there's a couple things you really need to consider. First of all, can you be undisturbed? And when I mean undisturbed, I mean undisturbed. So before COVID, what I used to do was go to my library and take a conference room and put a sign up on the door saying, please don't knock. And I would lock the door, and so that I knew that I wasn't going to be bothered for the period of time. If you're going to do it at your house, you need to make sure people know they can't open the door, they can't talk to you, they can't call you on the phone. True story, I took an exam, I think it was the PL-100. I took here in Maine, and my mom has two dogs, two poodles, and I had closed the door. So the door was securely closed, but I guess not as securely closed as I thought it was, because they came into the room and jumped on the bed. And I thought, oh, that's it. I'm done. The proctor will say you're canceled. But fortunately, I guess she didn't think that poodles were a threat, although they are very smart dogs. Apparently, they're not super well known for their data analysis skills. So but it is important. You need to be able to be undisturbed. You need to have good internet. I actually was trying to take an exam recently, the DP 500, that I was pretty sure I was not going to pass. And my internet at the time was acting super wonky. And it not only delayed me getting onto the exam, getting onto the platform, I just was really worried that it was going to, conk out in the middle or something. So again, you want to make sure you've got good internet, and you also need to have a space you can declutter. Okay, so true story, I took an exam in my bathroom once, sat on the floor. It was very uncomfortable, and it was just that was when I took the brand new the PL-300 when it was still in beta, and I wasn't worried about passing per se, but I was a little worried to some extent, because it was just so uncomfortable to take the test in that space. So you can't have any books nearby. You can't have anything that could be quote unquote hiding any answers. So that's one reason why I always like to go to the library if it's available, because you can get a conference room that has nothing in it. So again, you have to have a space that you can declutter. You can go to a facility. I will tell you is that with COVID, I don't know how many facilities are still out there. I'm not very knowledgeable about that anymore because I do take all my exams online. So you would need to find one near you and what the hours are and so on and so forth. So again, that would be something you would have to investigate. Personally, I really like taking the exams online. There is, as long as you know what the rigmarole is that you're going to have to go through, and you're prepared for that, it's a good experience. You can reschedule an at-home exam or an online exam up to 24 hours before the exam. Check your test taking facility for their policies because I don't know if they're different, okay, for that. But I have rescheduled exams multiple times. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, please feel free to interrupt me. Don't save your questions for the end. If you got a question, you can either put it in the chat or just interrupt me. I don't mind at all being interrupted. So feel free to do that if you've got a question or a comment. Or a comment. If you've got something pertinent on the topic, please don't hesitate to jump in here. Your technical requirements are really pertain to an online exam. You are actually, this would also pertain in a facility. You're going to need an ID with a name that matches your Microsoft account. I have a friend who has really struggled because she prefers to go by one name and her government ID has her full name, but that's not how she's registered on her Microsoft account. So again, just be aware you do need an ID with a name that matches your Microsoft account. If you're taking it online, the IDs that they accept are driver's licenses, passports, and passport cards. I think I used the passport card last time, or another state ID of some kind. You do need a working camera on your laptop or one that is attached to your laptop. I will tell you, part of the horror story that I experienced by taking it in the bathroom was that I had at the time a Dell computer that had the camera at the bottom. I don't know if anybody had that model, but they, for a minute, put the camera at the bottom of the screen and oh, the proctors just made my life a living hell. Okay. They constantly were like, you've got to move the camera. You've got to adjust. We can't see you. So again, you got to have a camera on your laptop or attached to your laptop. And you got to have a working microphone and speaker. So when you get started, you use your phone to check in and provide pictures of your environment as well as pictures of your ID. And then they will connect with you and through the software that they have, and they'll check in with you and make sure that you're there, and then your camera stays on the whole time. They're watching you the whole time. You do want to be sure to test the test taking software first because that's how you're going to take the test. So you want to make sure that that actually works on your computer ahead of time. And even if you've just taken an exam, for whatever reason, even though I've downloaded their app and maybe, taken an exam, I don't know, 6 months ago, when I go to take another exam, you have to re-download the software. I'm not quite sure why, but again, be sure to allocate some time for that. You do get on to the exam. You have 30 minutes to log in and get ready. So your time slot opens 30 minutes before your exam comes on. I recommend be sure to start checking in 30 minutes before, because if you run into any technical difficulties, you need those 30 minutes. If you have started your check-in process before your exam time, you're not going to be dinged if the exam doesn't get released until, after your appointment, so to speak. But if you log in after your appointment, then you're out of luck. So again, you have 30 minutes, so you probably want to be ready to go 30 minutes ahead of time. Preparing for the exam. So this is obvious, but you know what? Get a good night's sleep. You're not going on trial the next day. Okay, I know plenty of people who have a lot of exam phobias. I'm blessed. I'm not one of those people. I remember taking the SATs in high school and being like, whatever. And I just don't get worked up about it. But you just remember, keep everything into proportion. You're not going before a judge and jury. So get a good night's sleep. Um, and this is also pretty obvious, but don't eat or drink anything new or excessive the night before. And the reason I say that is because um, I don't know what it's like in the physical if you go to a test taking facility. I do know that they have just changed the rules so you I think are allowed to go to the bathroom if you're taking the exam online. I think you're allowed one bio break. I personally wouldn't even want to try it because I don't even those the proctors that they have are quite frankly a nightmare to begin with. So I can't speak to what taking a bio break in the middle involves. I wouldn't try it myself. So clearly don't do something that's going to require you to have to take a break in the middle of the exam if you can avoid it. And again, don't drink 3 pots of coffee right before the exam. Okay, just don't. Uh, this is another one that's obvious, but be sure to breathe. Again, if you're a person who's got nerves, who gets nervous in exams, you'd be amazed. You'll find yourself shallow breathing, and that's just going to increase your nerves and increase your anxiety. So you definitely do not want to. You want to pay attention to your breathing and make sure that you're breathing slow breaths. Because it'll help control the anxiety if you're somebody who gets very, very nervous. I mean, even I get nervous at the beginning of a test. Um, and that is one thing I will say is that it's usually uh, worst at the very, very beginning when you first get started. So one of the things to be aware of is, calm yourself, breathe deeply, especially at the beginning. And once you've gotten into a couple of questions, then you'll settle into it and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I know this. And dress comfortably for the room you're taking the test in. You can't get up and change and take a sweater off or put a sweater on, or you can't do any of that. So make sure that you've got something on that you're going to be comfortable for the whole test. Yes, there you go. So Christine, thank you for jumping in. Any noise. Yep, they don't like noise. Those proctors, they don't like noise. They don't like anything. Okay. So again, anything you can do. Um, yes. All right. So Jeremy says, wait, let me get that chat up because that's so true. Some have been total sticklers. I was leaning my chin on my hand and they asked me to stop. Yep, I've had that. In fact, we're going to cover that on this slide. So, uh, totally. So during the exam, okay, hold on. What's wrong with my slide? I need to get it to move. There we go. The one thing is you want to manage the exam clock. So I think the PL-300 allows 2 hours. You'll have to check on the website, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. I have never used the full 2 hours, okay? But do manage your exam clock. If you don't know the answer to a question right away, what I usually do is I'll say, okay, do I have a reasonable guess for this question? And if I do, I'll put the question, I'll answer with my best guesstimate. And then if I want to, if I feel like I'm not really sure about that, I'll mark it for review. So I don't spend hours on one question. I look at it and I go, okay, I'm not too confident on that one. Let's keep moving. And let me just get to this question right here. Michael Irwin says, how much does it cost to take these tests? It is, I believe, retail is $165 for one of these exams. They do sell packages, so you can get like a retake package. Also, a lot of times Microsoft gives out coupons. So if you go to like Ignite or something else, they'll have coupons. The one thing I will say with vouchers is that you usually have to take them. For example, I took the DP-500 with a voucher that they were giving out, and when I tried to reschedule it, because that's my absolutely favorite thing to do is to schedule an exam and then push it off. But with the voucher, there's usually very strict time limits. So if you do schedule with using a voucher, you're probably not going to be able to reschedule. And then, so Jeremy's just put in the chat the replay option. So Again, if you're a person who likes to have that, comfort zone, you can do that. Buy the replay package. Okay. All right. So during the exam, back to during the exam, don't cover your mouth. They don't like they don't like it when you cover your mouth. Okay. So as I think it was Jeremy or whoever said in the chat, if you cover your mouth or put your chin in your hands, they don't like it. I've had them say it to me repeatedly. Make sure you don't have any interruptions. Find a comfortable position and stick with it. Okay. So what I do literally is as soon as that camera goes on, and it goes on after you've done all your ID verification, I just stare at the camera. I don't move. I don't move. I don't look away. I just stare at it because I don't want these proctors to get on my case. Don't read the question even silently, if you're taking the exam online. Now, obviously, I don't know what you can get away with in a room, but the proctors don't like it if you read the question to yourself, even silently. They don't like that. So if that's a habit you have, can't do it or don't do it. Don't plan on drinking or eating during the exam. I literally had one proctor have me hold up my Pepsi bottles so that he could verify that there were no answers in the Pepsi bottle. So again, just little tips and tricks that I've found. All right, I think that's it on things to watch out for during the exam. I want to talk about the exam format. Now, as you know, we're not allowed to talk about what's on the exam. And so Derek asked the question, how do you answer a question if you can't read it? So what I mean by that, Derek, is some people like to, sort of silently say it to themselves or even say it to themselves out loud. Maybe that helps them internalize the question. They don't like it. You have to just, you read it obviously, but you read it with your eyeballs. You don't mouth it, there you go. See, yep, exactly. I know, I can't even understand, but I guess the logic is somebody could be hiding and you could be saying the question and then they could be whispering an answer. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. All right, the exam format. So you're going to find 4 different kinds of questions on the exam. The first is going to be case studies, and what they do is they give you a set of set of descriptions. So the first is the current environment. Then the second part is what they want to accomplish. And the third is, what they've tried or what's not working. And then you will answer questions based on those descriptions. So the first thing, and I'm going to say this over and over again, and I know it sounds crazy, but I do believe it's part of the reason why I test so well, is you need to read the read the descriptions. So what I do is I read the descriptions slowly and carefully. Then I go and I look at the questions. Then I go back and I read the description again. And usually there's something in the description that is going to give you some idea of what the right answer is. Not always, of course, not always, but generally speaking, I have found that if I go back and I look carefully at the description, either in their current environment or, what they've tried or whatever is in the description, I usually can find enough information that can guide me as to what I should answer. Okay. So again, I cannot stress enough through this whole thing, read the descriptions very, 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 very carefully and read the questions carefully. Okay. So case studies, you'll get this elaborate set of descriptions, and then you'll be asked questions based on what they say that that they want to accomplish. Case studies are almost always going to be their own section. Okay, so when you're working on a case study, you get to answer those questions and you cannot come back later and change anything in that section. So what you want to do is read this case study, answer the questions, go back, read the descriptions again, and review your questions, because your answers, because you're not going to be allowed to come back to that section. Then the next type of question is drag and stack. So you're given just a very simple question, and you are given like 4 answers or 5 possible answers. And you have to drag the right answer into it's almost a little bit. Anybody here play Mad Libs when you were a kid? It's almost a little bit like Mad Libs. So you're dragging an answer into a sentence, let's say. So it might be something like, I'm just making this up. Obviously, I don't know what's on the exam per se, but it might be something like the Power BI prefers a data model that is a star schema, B, a flat table, C, third normal form, table or database, that kind of thing. And you will pick the answer. Um, Sometimes that it will be in something that requires 2 different answers in there. So what I usually do, because I think there's usually about 4 or 5 answers, I can't remember. So what I usually do is if I know the answer right away, then no brainer, I just answer it and move on. But if I don't, the next thing I'll do is I will look at the options. And usually there's clearly one that isn't correct, usually even that I know that is not correct. So I'll eliminate that one, and then I'll look at what's remaining and I'll say, okay, out of what's remaining, which one is the most likely and which one is the least likely? And I'll just try to whittle things down that way. So again, I'm working the odds. Now, dragon stacks are great because you can mark those for review. And what I have found is, especially at the very beginning of the exam, I'm very nervous, or as nervous as I get. And I settle down about 10 or 15 minutes into the exam. And as I move through the exam, I remember things. I remember concepts, or certain questions will remind me of something. So again, um, mark questions for review if you're not 100% secure in your answer. You'd be amazed how many of those you go back to and you're like, oh yeah, okay, it should be this. So again, eliminate what's clearly wrong, and then take your best guess and then come back and if in market for review if you really are you feel a little bit wobbly about it. And usually by the time you get to the review point, you've remembered enough and your nerves have settled enough that you know the right answer. Sometimes you don't, and then you have to guess. And that's where you have to eliminate the ones that you know are clearly wrong, because then you're increasing the odds of being correct. So there's drag and stack, and then there's fill in the blank. That's kind of another variant of that. And I should say that in the drag and stack question, they will ask you something like, okay, you have to, let me think of an example here. You have to create, you want to create a table that has, this and this and this in it. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to do these 4 actions in what sequence. And so then you would have to put the actions in the right order. Okay, so again, fill in the blanks for a simpler version of that. Drag and stack are a slightly more complex version of that. And then problem and solution. So that's one where it's sort of like a mini case study. So they say, okay, you have this organization and they want to do, this. And then they'll give you a proposed solution and they'll say, will this meet, will this solve the problem? And they'll give you multiple solutions and you have to say whether the solution will solve the problem. Usually, again, with these, go back and read the problem. I have found numerous times that there is wording in the problem statement that helps me with the solution. Okay, helps me pick the right solution. So sometimes it might just be a little detail buried in the problem statement that says, oh, okay, well, because of that, they can't do this. Don't try to game the algorithm. Okay, so the solution, sometimes there's two solutions that can work. So again, it's not a matter of thinking, okay, well, if they provided me with four different solutions, only one of them could work. Because sometimes it might be two can work, sometimes it might be nothing can work. But again, read that problem statement and the solution statement very carefully. And I think that is all the types of questions that you'll run into. Again, the key, I think if I had to put it down, my success in passing things that I don't know anything about, and please don't get me wrong, I have failed plenty of exams. Okay. I've still never passed that advanced Excel. I don't know if anybody's ever passed it. I've never passed that exam. I've given up trying. Okay. So again, I've failed some exams. So it's not like I have a perfect track record because I do not. But for the things that I've passed when I didn't really know anything, I would say the secret is reading very, very carefully, because usually you're going to find something in what they've written that's going to give you the clues that you need. Okay. Sometimes you don't, and that's the breaks, but usually you will, in my experience. All right. So that's the exam format. Um, and really you can manage your clock any way you want to, okay? The only thing to be aware of is that it's usually the case that when you do the case studies, once you're finished with that, you cannot go back to the case study. So those are ones that you may want to take a little more time on, whereas some of the simpler questions like the fill in the blank or the drag and stack, you can go back and review. So I tend to work through those pretty quickly and mark things for review, because again, what I found is that by the time I'm about 15 or 20 minutes in, my nerves have really settled down and I'm like, okay, yep, got this. Okay. And then I can go back and fill in answers that I missed. Okay. Now, again, please feel free to put questions in the chat or interrupt me at any point in time. I really don't mind it. And keep your own personal comments coming because it's helpful. Everybody's test taking styles are different. All right, so the exam, I often am asked by my students what the exam coverage is. I call this a full spectrum exam. Okay, it's going to cover the entire Power BI ecosystem. You're going to get a little bit of everything. Oh, great question, Daryl. So you can tell I don't even really pay attention to that stuff. So it's a 700 out of 1,000 is passing. So great question, 70% basically. And each section is weighted differently. So you can't really, game it and say, okay, I know that if I get this much on this section, then, I'll pass it, because the way they weight them, is part of the secret sauce. So again, I tend not to worry about it. I tend to just get in there and just take it and see what I get. Like I said, sometimes I'm amazed by the things I've passed. So this is a full spectrum exam. You are going to need to know how to use the Power Query Editor, how to use the desktop, how to use the Power BI service. It does cover visualizations. It does cover a little bit of M and a little bit of DAX. I would not say that you have to be really, really expert at DAX, okay, or expert at M, but you do need to know the differences between DAX and M, and be able to recognize an M statement and what's written in M and what's written in DAX. Oftentimes I've seen those are great for the fill in the blank. Okay, so they might have a statement like, building a measure where you have calculate and then you have, use relationship, and you have to put in the right building block. So you do not have to be a DAX expert, but you have to have touched it at least a little bit, in my opinion. Now, in the tests that I've taken, I haven't seen a lot of it. So it's not as if you don't know DAX, you're in deep water. Okay, but DAX is there, and a little bit of M is there as well. You do need to know data modeling, and you also need to know some basic admin and governance types of tasks for the service. So again, like I said, this is a full spectrum exam. There really isn't anything it doesn't cover, at least not in my experience. So I thought what I would do now is just make sure that I go through all of the topics that are listed in on the Microsoft domain coverage. I'm not going to go through every single one of them in great detail, but I will point out some that you may want to pay more attention to. Okay, but again, it does behoove you to cover every single domain that they mention because the exam does cover every domain. It may cover some more and some less, but every single one of them is going to be covered. So the first domain or the first thing that they are going to put on the exam is something about getting data. So you will need to know how to have, how to change data source settings, okay, in the Power Query editor. You do need to understand storage modes, so import versus direct query. I don't recall seeing anything about composite models. This is not a super advanced test, so they're not trying to trick you out and ask really complex things. But you do need to know, like the differences between direct query and import mode. You need to know some of the different major data sources. So what I mean by that is, SQL Server and Dataverse and things like that. So you don't have to be proficient with, super arcane sources, but again, the major sources you need to be aware of. And where I've seen that, to the best of my recollection, so keep in mind that every exam is different because they load them with different questions, but you may see that different sources as in a case study. Okay, so they want to do this, this, and this, and they want to pull it from a SQL server, and they want it to refresh. They want to be working with up to the minute data. Can they use import, for example? That, I mean, again, I don't know what questions there are, but it could be something like that. Um, Parameters, that one is a real tricky one for me because you don't actually know. You don't have to know how to create parameters in M, or at least not according to their domain. You have to know how to change a parameter. So for me, what I tell my students is, if you're going to go halfway, you might as well go all the way and just learn parameters, period. But in the domain, they just specifically say you have to know how to change one. You do not have to know how to create one. So again, you might as well learn them. They're good to know anyway. All right, so the next area is preparing the data. And you do need to know, how to use the Power Query editor. Again, not something that any of you are not going to know, okay? Replacing and adding data, combining and deleting data, working with just some data, okay? So this is one where I think the idea that working with some data, really understanding this idea of how to filter rows in the Power Query editor and the fact that you can filter rows, as well as the profiling, where at the bottom of the Power Query editor window where it says you can profile using just the first 1,000 rows versus using the entire data set. So again, things like that are things that are probably good to know because they may show up in a question, okay? And then, of course, loading your queries and, disabling the load on some queries, let's say. So again, routine stuff that most of you are going to know just because of your daily, what you do daily. All right. In terms of data modeling, you're going to need to know about dimensions and facts. Yes. So, and hold on, I'm going to stop here and just answer this question. Pranam is saying, is the syllabus constant or at least frozen for a period of time or ever changing considering monthly updates to Power BI Desktop and periodic updates to the Power BI service? Love this question. Love, love, love this question. Here's why. Because you're right. The product is constantly changing. And I do not believe that so the domains do not constantly change. They do update the domains. A really good example of this right now is the new app experience. I don't know if anybody's had the experience where you created a new app or you updated your app from your workspace and it flipped over to the new type of app. Um, I, to the best of my knowledge, the new app experience is not on the exam. Okay. But it is, um, so to your question, Pranam, yes, it is held constant. I would say, and I don't know 100%, but I would say that they are not going to have things on the exam that just were released. Okay, because they are very well aware that lots of people have not experienced, a new feature. Lots of companies are not necessarily using the latest and greatest Power BI desktop. But so I would go by the domain lists that they have. If you are actively using Power BI, you should be fine. Okay. So for example, again, using the example I just gave you, I would not expect to see the new workspace, the new app experience on the exam yet, because it just was released like a month ago. So again, great question. But it is frozen for a period of time and then they update it. Okay, so you're going to need to know about dimensions and facts. You are going to need to know about relationships. Okay, so again, lots of things that everybody already knows about here, so nothing new there. Um, Filter directions. So for example, a question you might, again, I'm making all of these questions up because honestly, I can't even remember. I took the PL-300 like a year and a half ago, maybe even longer. No, even longer. Anyway, whenever, because I took it when it was in beta. But an example you might get would be, you're trying to create a visual that has, this, and this, and you're not able to do it, and you are somebody, so a user is trying to create something and they're not able to do it. You're asked to, troubleshoot, and here are the possible solutions to the problem. And I could see where, looking at something about filter directions could be the type of question, or the type of relationship could be a potential solution to the problem. I don't see tons and tons of questions being built around that, but you probably will see at least a few questions. Date tables. You're going to want to know about date tables, why you want a date table, what are the characteristics of a date table, and that kind of thing. Great question, Pranam. How much percentage of the questions pertain to pro versus premium features? I will tell you honestly, I don't think there are any questions about premium. I think there are, well, no, I'm going to take that back. I think there might be questions about the different license types. So you need to know that there's such a thing as a premium license, and you need to know the basic features of a premium feature. But they do not ask you questions in my memory about premium because they know most people don't have it. So how are they? You can't even study for it. So for example, when I'm teaching, I can't teach premium stuff because I have no way to practice with it. I have no way to demonstrate it. Okay, so great question. And you would need to know about premium features, what they are, but you don't have to have worked with them. And then let's see, Christine, it seems to me like they put things on there that they really want to promote. Lots of QA optimization, some Dataverse. There was a bunch of premium related questions on the official practice test. Well, that's interesting, Christine. So yeah, that would be different from my experience. When they talked about premium related, when you say they were premium related questions, was it the features of premium or actually how to do stuff in premium? Because I'd be really super shocked if they had done that. Anyway, I'd be interested to hear more about that. I don't know if they put stuff on there that they want to promote. I don't know if I would say that. I find that some of the ways that they prioritize or the things they put on their questions, I've on their domain descriptions at least, and some of their questions are a little yeah, okay, that'd be great. I'd be interested to know that, Christine, because again, but I think on balance, the PL-300 is a fairly decent test. Every test has problems, but you know, my memory, and again, I haven't taken it in a while, but my memory is it's pretty broad spectrum. So, but I don't recall any premium questions because you can't use it. If you don't have premium in your office, you don't have any way of using those features. So, for whatever that's worth. All right, but I would be interested in your experience, Christine. Okay, then if we talk about developing the data model, um, adding data to the data model, you know, the differences between calculated columns, tables, measures, those are important. You do want to know those. I will say that those are probably going to show up more in like a case study or in a, you know, the user has called and they need to do this and this and you know, do a drag and drop with, you know, different possible answers. So create a calculated column or, you know, create a measure or something like that. So you do need to know the differences between those, as well as, you know, some of the liabilities around calculated columns. Like, when do you want to create a calculated column? When do you have to create a calculated column? So again, not an official question. Do not remember the official questions. And even if I did, I couldn't share them, but I could see a question that would be something like, you know, you want to be able to use a value in a slicer or a filter. Can you just create a measure or do you have to have a calculated column? And obviously the answer would be a calculated column. Oh my God. Wait, let's see. What is she saying? What are you saying here, Christine? Oh, practice
Don't know
test
what I'm
covered
saying.
paginated reports,
Like
report server.
when you would want one, or like what cases you would create a paginated report in. And
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yep, yep, yep. I could see that. Yes, it would. They have been known to ask about that. So yes, you do need to know like what a paginated report is. But I don't recall there being a question about like, okay, you have a paginated report and you have to do this, this, and this. But I do agree that they will say, oh, when do you need, you know, in what case would you need a premium license? And, you know, something like that might be, you know, large data sets or, you know, incremental refresh or things like that. So yes, features, yes. How to use premium features? No, because again, most people I don't think have them. But yes, I do like yes, there could be questions on those types of things. Any questions about external tools, DAX Studio or Tabular Editor? Nope, because those are not part of the core set. So no, no questions on those. Yes, and Christine Silky has a question, a reply question for you. Is that a 4-pay practice test? By the way, I do like those 4-pay practice tests. I've done one. I did one for the PL-100, and I found them very helpful. In fact, I will say this, although I don't know that I should say it. Um, I found that when I took the 4-pay practice test and then I went and took the PL-100, some of the same questions were on the real exam. So measure up, yep. So I have bought several Measure Up products, and I think they're worth it. If you like to test yourself ahead of time, I think they're worth it. Like I said, I did it for the PL-100, and some of the same questions showed up. So for whatever that's worth. All right. Refining your data model. Yes, so you will need to know things like hierarchies and hiding fields, default summarization, categorization. Again, none of this is going to be news to anybody here. And they're covered, You're not going to see a ton. You'll see a couple questions on those things. They're obviously not going to be spending hours on how do you build a hierarchy. But you might see a question on that. And then Q&A. So this is one that I do agree with Christine. I feel like the last time I took a PL-300 test, there were things on the Q&A feature, and if I had to do it again, I would definitely bone up on my Q&A knowledge. Just because it's not something I use, it's not something I really focus on, but they do talk about it in the exam as far as I remember, and it's definitely in the domain. So Q&A, just remember that with Q&A, you have to set it up in two places. One is in the desktop itself, and then over in the service. So it's one of those things you have to remember that you've got to do both for it to work. But yes, I agree that they do put stuff on Q&A in there. Okay, and then security. Security is a big one. So security, they do talk about row level security, how to set up the roles, and I could easily see a question on okay, they want people to only be able to see these rows in this table. How would you write that DAX? How would you set up that role? Okay, so again, security is an important one. All right, model calculations. Again, it does help to know some DAX and some DAX syntax. Again, what I have found is that when I look, they'll give you a question of, and they'll show you let's say they'll say, okay, finish this measure, and you have to drag and drop. And so you really do need to know some of the top 10 DAX functions, including calculate, okay, including calculate, and you need to know the syntax for them. So again, it's one of those, I don't recall that they do anything where they really try to trick you and like get into the arcana of, okay, when is it converted from the filter context to the row context and all. I don't recall them getting super deep into that. But you will need to understand some basic DAX and some basic DAX syntax and like the top 10 functions in DAX for sure. And how to build measures. I distinctly remember having questions where I had to drag and drop to complete a DAX measure. Okay, I distinctly remember that because I was not very good at DAX, and actually, I'm going to say I'm not very good at DAX still, but I do remember being a little intimidated by that. Filter context, again, something that you do need to know. Like I said, I don't, they might get into row context in the sense that they might ask a question about an iterator, but I don't think they get into that, complex solution where, the filter context, the row context gets passed into a filter context or whatever. Okay, I don't remember any of that kind of, they're not trying to trick you on these exams, or at least that wasn't my experience. But you will need to understand basic row context for, iterators and basic filter context. Calculate, you will need to understand the basic mechanics of calculate. And, implicit and explicit measures, always a good thing to know about. And then the families of DAX functions. And this one I find really interesting because they say in the domain that you need to understand statistical functions. And I struggle with that one because it's like, okay, why did you pick that one out of all of the different families of functions? And the best answer I can give to that is because maybe most of us don't work with statistics on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I realize some of us might, but a lot of us don't. So I would definitely recommend studying, kind of the basic 10 principles, like, a median and the difference, let's say, between a median and an average, and, the basic mechanics of forecasting and things like that. You don't have to get super deep into statistics, but they explicitly say it in the domain. And I do recall there being questions around, some of the more basic principles of, statistics, as far as, you know, using the analytics pane, and figuring out how to group and bin things. So again, it does behoove you to make sure that you pay special attention to statistics. Just the basics. You don't have to become a statistician. And then you have to know how to use the performance analyzer, the basics of it. Okay, so I think the critical point for the performance analyzer is, knowing that you can open it up, that you can turn it on, and then you can, click through a page, you can click on a visual, you can see the DAX, and you can see the performance metrics for it. So again, it's not super in-depth. Okay, bye, Silky. See you later. But again, knowing the basics of the performance analyzer is helpful. You need to have opened it. You need to have used it, at least to just look at your DAX and look at the performance of your DAX. You do not need to know DAX Studio or anything like that. And typical problems. One thing that I've done is I have a list of the typical types of things that cause performance problems, and then knowing what their resolution is. Okay, so for example, hold on, I gotta find where I put that. Hold on. Well, I can find it in a minute. But in any case, make a list for yourself of the things that typically will cause performance problems, and what the resolution is. So for example, one that's, again, like I could see this being on there. Again, I do not remember if it was or not, but you put on into your tooltips, you put in, 17 fields. Well, that would be a place where you could slim that down and probably improve the performance responsiveness of the page. So again, sort of identifying the basic problems with that could cause responsiveness problems, and just knowing about them would probably help. Okay. Hold on, let me get back over here. But you won't have to be, like an engineer. Then lots of stuff on creating reports. So again, I'm going to just quickly sort of whip through these. The canvas, themes. For some reason, I don't know why, I do recall that there was a question on themes. I can't remember what it was. I don't know, I kind of thought it was silly to put that in there, but themes, accessibility. Microsoft is huge on accessibility. So definitely you want to make sure that you know what the basic principles are for accessibility, and things like the fact that in the formatting of a visual, you have an alt text box where you can put something that a screen reader can pick up. Those kinds of things are very, very useful. I would say you probably will see a question on, or two or three, on accessibility. I remember seeing some questions on it in the DP-500. So this is something that they are keen on. So standard and custom visualizations. I don't think they talk too much about custom visualizations, more so just be aware of what they are. And the families of visualizations. I think the best study aid for this is the graphic that SQL BI put out a couple of years ago, where they have the different categories of visualizations and what they're best for. And, so for example, line graphs are good for, data over time. So again, just knowing the different types of visualizations and what they are best suited for. And as I said, that SQL BI graphic is probably the best source, in my opinion, for that. All the little bells and whistles on configuring a visual. Okay, so changing the sort order, or Using the expand down, all those kinds of things. You need to know where those all are, but of course you do know those things. So again, these are not super complex questions. Formatting, again, being aware of formatting features for the visuals. Slicers and filters, drill throughs, conditional formatting, other page elements, so buttons and images, things like that, and designing for mobility. I feel like there was a question on that. Again, I don't pay too much attention to that, generally speaking, but you might get a question on designing for mobility. And paginated reports, as Christina said, you do need to know what they are and why they are there. When would you use a paginated report versus a standard Power BI report? And then enhancing reports. So how to sort visuals, how to use those expand down, drill down, interactions, bookmarks, and tooltips. Again, all very important. And then identify patterns and trends. So this one is where you get into this little bit of statistical sort of knowledge that they feel like you have to have. So knowing how to use the analytics pane for certain visuals, the forecasting feature, and identifying outliers and categorical versus continuous axes, and group spins and clusters. So again, all of those things you can, in my experience, expect to see at least a few questions on that. Okay. So again, it's not like you have to be a statistician, but you have to be familiar with some of those basic statistical concepts. And using the AI visuals. So Christine, pursuant to your comment, my experience is they love those AI visuals. So to that extent, I would say familiarize yourselves with those. The one I just can't stand because I really truly don't fully understand it is the, what do they call that one? It's not the decomposition tree. I love that one. It's the other one, but make sure you're familiar with those. No, not the smart narrative. It's the other one. See, I can't, here's a good indicator that that is not something I'm ready. I really understand. Not the heat map. Hold on. Okay, that's it. I got to pull up my Power BI right this minute. Hold on. I got to go look. It's a good indicator that I don't fully understand it because I can't really describe the key influencers. That one. Oh, I cannot stand that visual. Yeah, I really don't even understand it very well. So again, spend some time. Make sure you understand those AI visuals. No, I don't think so, Daryl. They don't ask about composite models, or at least not in my experience, and that's not in those are not in the domain. Okay, so because composite models are kind of a more advanced topic generally. So no, I don't think they will ask about composite models. They will ask about import versus direct query. They could ask about it. I don't know if they will. Remember, each exam is automatically sort of shuffled. So every time they deliver it, you get a different set of questions. So Christine, yeah, I cannot explain to you how that key influencers visual works. I hate it. I don't understand it. I don't understand what it's telling me. So clearly I need some work in that space. All right. But they are high on their AI visuals, I will say. All right, keeping on moving. Oh, yay. Okay, I have to check that out, Jay, because I need help on my key influencers. Decomposition tree, though, give me that all day long. I love that. I love that visual. All right, managing files and data sets. You definitely need to know about refreshes, all about refreshes. What can you do? What does each license type give you? I do not remember if they asked about incremental refresh, but it would be wise to sort of know about it. Okay. And Pranam saying Sandeep recommended the visual not be used for end users. Yay. Good, because I'm a trainer and I don't get it. And if I don't understand it, I can't explain it. Okay, so that's one visual but they do love that visual. So gateways, you definitely need to know when a gateway is required. You don't need to know per se when to, how to set it up, but you need to know when you might need a gateway. Row level security, configuring that. So remember, that's two parts. That's creating the roles in the desktop and then assigning people to those roles in the service. So you do need to know about row level security. And building and share permissions. You absolutely will need to know about when are you automatically granting building and share permissions, and what that involves. That is definitely something that you need to have under your belt. And why do I have group bins and clusters there? Sorry, that's the wrong. I clearly copied the slide and didn't get rid of that. So ignore group bins and clusters. And ignore using AI visuals. Whew, okay, sorry about that, guys. Dashboards, yes, you need to know how you create a dashboard and how you can add and edit tiles. Putting alarms on tiles, I could see that being something. Configuring a mobile dashboard, again, you're not going to see, I don't think, a whole ton about, configuring mobile things, but you might see a question or two. Using the Q&A feature, they love Q&A. So again, bone up on Q&A, make sure you know how to use it, make sure you know how to set it up. They love Q&A, to Christine's point. And finally, I think we're at the end, managing workspaces. Again, really understand the structure of the service and the anatomy of a workspace. Where do you find what? How workspaces and apps work together. Again, the app experience, to Pranam's question earlier, I don't think you'll see anything about the latest version of apps with the audiences, the one that they just released, because not enough people have it yet, I don't think. So you'll still be tested on the old way of creating an app, which is, you can either specify a specific group of people or you can specify the general audience. Promoting and certifying and data sensitivity labels. They have that, I think, on the domain. I think the most important thing on that one is knowing that you're not going to have data sensitivity labels in Power BI unless your organization has paid for them in Microsoft 365. So again, it's not a matter of you in Power BI can turn those on by yourself. Those have to be present in your environment already, and then your admin can enable that. And whoops, that's it. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of all of the domains. Again, I would recommend looking at where you're weakest. Okay, don't spend the time studying on where you're strongest. Go and look at the things that you're like. So for me, if I was sitting down to take the PL-300 right now, I would, for me, I would go back over Q&A. I'd go back over statistics, the basic statistics. I'd go back over those those AI visuals. I would go back over grouping and binning and those kinds of things, because again, those are things that I don't work with every day and I don't teach all the time. So I would go over those. So again, and I'd go over security because that's a real, I feel like I'm very weak in security. So identify the things that you're weakest at, and go attack those first, and then swing back through and look at all the domains, and figure out, okay, can I explain the anatomy of a workspace? Could I sit down and give a little 5-minute TED talk on the anatomy of a workspace? How is it structured? What does it contain? What's a data flow? What's a dashboard? How does that differ from reports? If you can do those basic kinds of things and explain it in plain English, move on to the next topic. And because there's a lot of topics here and you want to get yourself up to date. Pranam, any input on taking up a bridging test now to keep your Microsoft certifications going? I think they made that change recently where you take up a test to extend your certification. I haven't had to do that. And the reason I haven't had to do that is because I just take the next exam. So like, for example, I took the DP 500 recently, figuring what the hell, I'll figure out what I don't know, and I passed it. Okay. And I promise you, I absolutely, in all sincerity, promise you that at least half of you that are on this call right now know more than I know about DP 500. Okay. So I haven't had to do that, Pranam. I do know people who do it. But I took the DA 100. Well, I got my MCSC. Then 2 years later, they came out with the DA 100. I took that one. Then they came out with the PL-300. I took that one. Then I took the PL-100, and then I took DP 500. So, and in between there, I'm sure I failed some exams. I think I failed the PL-200. In fact, I'm scheduled to go back and take the PL-200 again, which I really don't want to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, so yeah, I mean, I haven't taken one of those, sort of intermediate exams. I just go and take the next exam. But I think that they're not too difficult. I mean, I don't know. My philosophy on exam taking is you're not a failure. Just go take it. If you fail, the only thing that tells you is you're stretching and you need to go back. And now I get half off of my exams because I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. Okay. So it's easy for me to say that because I'm not paying $165. So I get where you put more money down, you then want to be a little more confident in your rate of passing. But yeah, that's my approach is I just move on to the next exam. And please, I don't want anybody walking out of here thinking I'm passing at 1,000. Okay. The total score is possible is 1,000. I've never gotten 1,000 on any exam. I usually come in somewhere between 700 and 800. And you know what? I don't care. If I get 701, I'm good. I'm done. And by the way, failures do not show up on your transcript, so nobody knows if you took the exam twice and failed it. Okay, like I said, I don't know how many times I've tried the Excel exam. I finally just gave up. I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm not passing that exam. I'll never be able to pass that exam and don't care. All right, questions, comments, thoughts, anybody? I don't know if I've overrun my time. I know that it's past my bedtime out here on the East Coast, but I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions anybody has. My parting words are just do it. Just do it. Just do it. You are not a failure if you fail. You are stretching and you will be amazed how many times you pass. So as I have been. So you know more than you realize. It sounds, okay, wait a second. So we've got some comments. So Pranam's comment is, I think if your exam is a Microsoft partner, employees get some vouchers. Yes, probably. So be careful with those vouchers though, because you usually cannot, they usually are time limited. At least that's been my experience. So if you do what I do, which is you push the exam off over and over and over again, you can't do that with vouchers. And in fact, that's how I ended up taking the DP 500 because it had a time limit and I didn't realize it had a time limit. And I was like, oh, I have to take this exam. So I just took it and then I passed. So Christine, do I have any favorite resources? Personally, I learned from books. Okay. Now I know a lot of people are not book fans. Okay. But I learned from books and I love, love, love I love my DAX books. Anything related to DAX, my first stop is SQL BI. Anything related to modeling and DAX, I just watch their videos and I love those. For Power Query Editor, I used the Gil Revive book, Collect, Combine, Transform, and the newest version of the Data Monkey book. Love those two books. Also, I love Ben Gribideau's blog on M. He gets into some way more advanced topics than they're going to cover on the exam. But again, I don't take exams because I want to pass the exam. Of course, I do want to pass the exam, but I take them because I want to know. I want to know that I know the stuff. Okay, so I always want to be ahead of what the exam is expecting. Oh, let's see. And then we have, oh, Tina says attend a dashboard in the day with us at Sky Point, and we typically have some vouchers. Yay. And Pranam says he usually takes his exams at the nearest exam center. Yeah, so again, that really depends on where you are in the country. I know some people don't have any near them. And then John says, so if you frequently pass without studying, are the exams adequate indicators of your expertise? I will say, John, that's a very fair question. I personally don't always think so. So I know for a fact when I took the data modeling exam, I knew nothing about data modeling, and I'm not downplaying my knowledge. I'm not being falsely modest. I know I did not know anything. But I guess I have the kind of brain that works that way because I was able to work through the questions and just kind of say, okay, well, it sounds like this should be possible, which is really what encouraged me to go into it more because I was like, oh, okay, well, if I can pass an exam on it, I must have some abilities here. I would also say that for the DP-500, I passed the exam. I know some people said it was very hard. I didn't find it very hard, but there were plenty of questions I didn't know, okay? But, I guess I just feel like taking tests, there's an art to it, okay? There's an art to it, and if you're the kind of person that gets super nervous, it's hard because you can't sort of psych yourself out. Whereas, and I used to think this was just me, but I was talking to my cousin and she does the same thing. We just look at the way the questions are asked and we're like, okay, well, if they ask the question this way and they use this wording, then probably it's going to be that. So I would say not always in my experience, John, but I'm also a very, very good test taker. Okay, always have been. Don't get nervous. Don't get freaked. Don't consider myself a failure if I fail. So I don't know. I might be an outlier, but I won't say they're bad tests. That's not the case. But I will say that there are probably people who have failed who know more than I do. Okay, and they may just not be very good test takers. All right, other questions, other comments? Pranam says, I prefer the MOS exam format as I had to complete tasks on a virtual windows and awarded points. See, in Pranam, I'm the absolute exact opposite. I prefer, because I can game the test in a way, I prefer where I have to guess or estimate answers. Great test taker or very lucky? No, I don't think I'm lucky. I think I'm a great test taker. I do. I've always done really well. Okay. The only thing I didn't do well on was math SAT. Okay. I was terrible in the math SAT. But that's because I psyched myself out, But Daryl says I failed a few CPA exams and I'm a CPA. Well, let me tell you something. I've heard those CPA exams are horrendous. Those are hard exams. So, all right. Other questions? Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, answer questions. John says, I was a Microsoft certified trainer years ago. Can I still get discounts? Yes. And in fact, being an MCT now, for now, at least until they change it again, is free. Okay, you used to have to pay. And now I don't know if they did it. I don't think they've changed it yet, but during COVID, they made it free. So if that deal is still going, you definitely, if you were a certified trainer, you have to teach one class a year to maintain it. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. And of
Uh-huh.
course, you can all make sure to drop links to your Twitter and your LinkedIn and everyone get connected. That's what this is all about.